Welcome to the Geeks Attic. This is a James Bond novel review of Live and Let Die. Live and Let Die is the second James Bond novel written by Ian Fleming in 1954. Now let's go ahead and dive into a brief summary. The gold coins from the lost treasure of Bloody Morgan are being shipped from a secret location in Jamaica to New York. Now these coins are being sold on the streets to fund the Russian organization SMERSH. James Bond has a pretty heavy burden on his shoulders in this big city and tropical adventure. He must find the source of the secret treasure to uncover a communist spy ring in New York run by a voodoo criminal mastermind and continue his personal mission to cripple SMERSH. Now let's go ahead and dive into my overall thoughts. I really enjoyed this second James Bond story just as much, if not more, than the first book, Casino Royale. Now, Live and Let Die was thrilling from start to finish. The threats James Bond faces were dire and sometimes pretty horrifying. Ian Fleming did a great job with the second installment of James Bond, expanding the spy adventure from the streets of New York to the tropics of Jamaica. There are many characters in this book that were written so very well. Some characters from Casino Royale make a comeback for the second book, such as Felix Leiter. Some of my favorite characters from this book would have to be the Robber and Coral. The Robber was an excellent henchman. He was hard-edged, he's not easily pushed around, and was full of surprises. Coral, he was a helpful friend to James Bond. It appears that James Bond has evolved a little bit since Casino Royale. In the previous book, he viewed women as a burden, especially on the job. In this book, his attraction for Solitaire was immediate and felt this connection with her as soon as they made eye contact. Who is Solitaire? Well, she's a voodoo psychic medium who was taken by the villain of the story, Mr. Big. She was to marry him against her will. Bond has a solid friendship with Felix Leiter, an agent of the CIA. Something happens to Leiter in this novel that enrages Bond further into his hatred for the Russian organization SMERSH. The villain of the story, Mr. Big, was written extremely well. His presence was overreaching. He was everywhere. He's an intimidating force, even though he isn't present through much of the story until mostly at the end. The fear that he instills in the streets with tales of voodoo magic plays to his advantage. He has people, his goons, everywhere. Like I said, eyes and ears that watch and listen to the happenings on the streets of New York and throughout Jamaica. He's an extension of SMERSH, though we don't get into those connections too much really at all. He appears to be his own man, his own boss, with his own goals. The tension between Mr. Big and James Bond is definitely felt. Mr. Big really lays down the law, telling Bond how things are going to be, and Bond has to disagree with that, of course. Much of the conversations in the book were written very well. The only bit of dialogue that potentially was a little bit too cheesy would be the conversations between Bond and Solitaire. But overall, the dialogue was very good. Fleming did very well with the descriptions and people and locations. I loved it. He did such a good job. The voodoo aspect of the story was very interesting and worked well. The book basically has two parts, the big city and the tropics of Jamaica. I'm not much a fan of the tropics, but Fleming, he had me hooked with the oceanic climax of the story, full of sharks, barracuda. Live and Let Die is just a fun James Bond adventure for sure. So do I recommend Live and Let Die? Yes. However, if you're sensitive to cultural differences and historical events, then you might be offended by this book. It's written in a different time period. So for the rating, I give this an A+. And that'll do it for this video. Check me out across all social media at The Geeks Attic. Have a good one.